Hello, personal productivity enthusiasts and community. Welcome to Anything But Idle, the Productivity News Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club. And if I can manage this dashboard, there we go. Hi, I'm Ray Sidney-Smith.
And I'm Augusto Pinaud.
Hosts for Anything But Idle. This is episode 89, and it's for October 25th, 2021. Will Android work profiles for Google Workspace help with work-life balance? Each week, we review and discuss the productivity and technology news headlines of the week. And with that, let's get into our articles from the personal productivity blogosphere and audiosphere. Augusto, what's our first story this week?
So the first one is from Bully Insight, and it's how you can use Google Calendar Time Insight to track your productivity. And same as Microsoft has done their Vivo and their Cortana now give you a report, Google has bring Time Insights to track your productivity. So the article shows you how to, go to calendar.google, go to the sidebar, and how to activate it. This is a really interesting way, especially if you live on Google Calendar to track. We have discussed here on the show, as well as in other shows, how important it is to have that time tracking, to know what you plan, but also what is really happening. We have talked about 25-55 that you and I do, that basically every 25-55 we go what we plan and what will actually happen. And it is really something powerful for the productivity and for tracking that productivity. So this is another tool that you can use for that.
Right. And just to clarify, this is for folks who are inside of Google Workspace. And so you have to have a Google Workspace account. And what Time Insights does is right there from the information bar, you will now able to see a time breakdown that is based on your working hours and the types of meetings you have, how much time you have spent in those things, whether you're meeting with one person, 3 people, all of those kinds of things. And then how much time you spend in meetings, knowing whether you have a meeting heavy day, in one particular week or another, and giving you some basic information there, and who you meet with most often, which can be helpful because you can say, oh, well, you know what, if I put together these few stakeholders or these few people in meetings, maybe we can have fewer meetings and gang them together so we can actually have more productive empty space, white space in the calendar to be able to have focus work or flow work. And I think that can be really useful. So I know that I've been looking at my own Time Insights and seeing how it differs from my other time management and time tracking tools. And I'm curious to see how others will use it over time. And with that, let's move on to our next story this week, Augusto.
Our next article comes from Forbes, 3 ways to boost productivity with autonomous motivation. And the article going to define autonomous motivation, that is embedded in the self-determination theory, not to be confused with STD. It's SDT. And I even said that because as I was reading STD, went back and said, oh, no. But it talks about the extrinsic motivation, the intrinsic motivation, and why the intrinsic motivations are so important for your organization, for your internal drive, for what you are really trying to accomplish, and how to enhance that autonomy in the work, providing choice, fostering relevance for people, allowing for criticism and independent thinking into your people, and how important is that work environment in your organization. As they said, your office and employee are unique. And now we're expanding that uniqueness into not only the office, but the work office. And when people come, and people are coming less days. So it's important to understand that and to keep that uniqueness.
Yeah, I think there's some really important components here that they talk about. Of course, self-determination theory has those 3 essential human needs underpinning it. Autonomy, which is where autonomous motivation comes from. So autonomy, not automatic or automation, right? We're not talking about automatic motivation, but autonomous. And so therefore self-directed. Relatedness and competence are the other 2 human needs that they talk about here. And I just wanted to point out that this has a lot of really strong corollary or parallel to the empowerment game plan that comes from Empowerment Takes More Than a Minute by Dr. Ken Blanchard. And Dr. Blanchard really talks about these three components of building an empowered team. And he talks about sharing information with everyone, creating autonomy through boundaries, and then ultimately replacing old hierarchy with self-directed teams. And I find that to be such an important and influencing model for how I think about management going forward, both of myself with regard to autonomous motivation, because it improves intrinsic motivation in that sense, but also management of others and making sure that I am breaking down boundaries of information sharing. I am capable of giving responsibility to people and autonomy to make those particular enactments of those particular rules and regulations and procedures. And then ultimately, removing hierarchy so that we have more team collaboration and this, more small team projects based better than saying, okay, this department now has purview over this particular thing, and now go do that in this old hierarchical perspective. And so if we start to think about this from our own personal productivity, we can actually have greater understanding of what really does motivate us to move forward in particular projects that might be hung up over time, that might be, holding us back in some way, shape, or form. So just kind of good to keep in mind in that sense. All right, on to our next story.
So our next story is how to trick from Lifehacker and how to trick your work-obsessed brain into taking actual leisure time. And we know a lot of people, and a lot of people who they don't have such thing as work-life balance. But not only that, they feel guilty when they go into leisure time. That's not my problem. It was at some point in my life. I didn't know how to take leisure time. I didn't know how to disconnect from work. And I have discovered over the years that long periods doesn't work for me. Okay, that's, I'm going to take 2 weeks off. I like this small burst. And sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's 3 hours, sometimes I'm going to take Saturday and Sunday or Friday and Saturday off. But it is important to understand and to convince yourself into take that time. It's self-care and it's really, really, really important.
Yeah, I think it's important to read what she talks about here from this particular clinical psychologist's perspective. And her name is Dr. Perpetua Neo. And she writes here about a strategy for basically helping to overcome this. And it really parallels well with many of my thoughts. But I'm just going to quote here because then my thought follows on. So she quotes her saying, "Let's start with baby steps and hijack it with an aim or a goal that is rest and leisure time. What will this leisurely activity help you with? Maybe it's intertwined with a goal, with your goal of getting healthier, or you're exploring places so you improve your photography skills. If you really enjoy an activity and happen to enjoy other outcomes alongside that, that'll make it easier for you to prioritize your leisure time," end quote. And I have to say, this is why I promote the concept of rejuvenation. And so I tend to talk about this from kind of the biological fitnesses in my own kind of lexicon. And so one of those fitnesses is rejuvenation. And the reason why I talk about rejuvenation for personal productivity minded individuals is this exact problem, which is that it's really tough to turn off being productive. We think of quote unquote rest, whether that's sleep or just sitting doing quote unquote nothing. The idea can feel unproductive. And we can avoid that by thinking about rejuvenation. Rejuvenative activities are those things that we do to expend energy towards some productive end that is not for work specifically, right? It's not for even personal responsibilities in essence. It could be a hobby. It could be any of those things. But what I found is that when you have rejuvenative activities, kind of pre-planned for your off time, non-work time, you tend to also then expend that energy, be more productive, and it leads to more rest naturally. And so this with my thinking in terms of this, and it's interesting to see Dr. Neo's perspective there. So try it out if you are feeling difficulty turning off in that sense.
Yeah, and as she said in that article, see leisure as a counterstone of your life. And years ago, when I discovered, as you said, the pre-plan. If I don't pre-plan, they will not happen. So now I have a checklist. okay, of what are those activities in order, what provide me the higher recharge versus the lower recharge. And I can go through that list and say, okay, I cannot do this, I cannot do this. Okay, fine, I can start on the number 5, that is whatever. The first one is tend to be reading. Walking is the last one. So if I cannot do any other than walking, well, fine, let me do walking. But understand that that is a cornerstone in your life. It's critical for it.
All right, on to our next story this week. This is on how to be a productive perfectionist using what this author calls an adaptive approach. And I found this article interesting in some vague way, and I can't particularly put my finger on it. And so perhaps you have other thoughts here, Augusto. But my two thoughts here were they talk about setting SMART goals, and that really does help you understand where you're going to get to from a measurable perspective. So SMART goals are specific, measurable, achievable or attainable, realistic, and time bound. That means that that there's some time associated with it. That there's a deadline or there is some kind of milestone ahead to finish those things, and that helps you track against things. The author also talks about the pretty much the concept of tracking and journaling, so that you're able to get thoughts out of your head and to reduce overthinking. And then finally, the notion of writing a done list. And this is the to overcome the idea that you might feel fanatical about keeping track of a task list, and that ultimately causing you more stress than not from the unfinished nature of task lists, but creating a done list. I'm not particularly a big fan of the concept of the done list in the way that they're talking about it, but I understand the veracity of keeping track of personal successes, and I think that can be really important. I don't think you can decouple the to-do list from a success list of this kind, but I think that there's some usefulness to balancing out the view. I think perfectionism is basically an obtuse view of reality, and so since you're looking at reality and not seeing yourself completing things, you're basically thinking that you're getting nothing done, or that you could get so much more done, when in reality, if you just tracked what you accomplish, your successes against what is on your to-do list and incomplete, and then seeing the items that you've completed plus your successes list, which many times are things that don't get tracked in your task list, right? They can be 2-minute items, they could be bigger items, but they just end up being not on your task list, and you complete them and you forget that you've done all of this stuff. I know that I do it every week. Augusto knows that.
Every day.
Yeah, right. And so it's really helpful to sit down and say, oh, you know what? All of these things happened and I responded well to them. And that helps to buffer some of that perfectionism. It doesn't completely get rid of it, but it can start to then create a self of balance that I think can be really useful. So in that sense, the article was helpful just to make sure that you are thinking through the idea that you have a light at the end of the tunnel in terms of balance, and you're not thinking about this from the perspective that everything is out of place and therefore you are somehow not on the right path, not basically getting all the things done you need to.
Right, and that's something that is 25-55 that I do. It's so helpful because I get sometimes at the end of the day and said, okay, I haven't done anything. I haven't accomplished anything. And I can go back to the list and say, okay, this is all that I plan and this is all what I report that I actually accomplished. And yes, many times it's like, oh, yeah, none of these were on the list. They happened, they were done, but none of them, client called and those kind of things happen, but they were never tracked. So this, I agree for you on the to-done list. But one thing I want to add about that was what it made me thought was not necessarily the done list, but just pay attention how you're writing that to-do list. Because especially for perfectionists, how you are writing that list, it's critical. Don't try to say finished project. No. Go into the parts, into the specifics. So,
yeah, I will want to note that you mentioned the 25-55, and I'm trying to scroll through and my system is giving me a little bit of a problem. But we discussed the 25-55 productivity accountability technique in episode 108. So if you go to productivitycast.net/108, you'll be taken to the 25-55 productivity accountability technique episode. Really well worth thinking through whether this is something that would help you having an accountability partner in that sense. Okay, on to our next story, Augusto.
Our next story is the secret of being more productive. And this was an interesting read, especially because you know it talks about life on your terms and define what productivity is. David Allen in his books or in his talks said, a tense muscle is a slow one. And he made the analogy to productivity. And I think it happened the same thing in your life. When your life is filled or full of things that you can relate, you don't feel good. Well, it's hard to be productive. And I don't remember who used to say, the most dangerous person in the any field is a guy who is having fun. And I remember that as a salesperson. Okay, I something that for many many years I enjoy so much, and the long hours and all that for me was part of having the fun. Same as the productivity. For the perspective of certain people, I work a lot of hours. If you ask me how many hours I work, just when I need to do the finances and the accountant on the business, that's the work. Coaching the clients, talking to the clients, creating the writing, that doesn't feel work to me. So
Yeah, so this author had a near-death experience, and based on this near-death experience, she then talked about the concept that you should be doing things that kind of almost a KonMari of your productivity world, right? What are the things that really spark joy, bring you joy, and can you restructure your life to do that? Her answer is yes. Quoting here, she says, "Life should be lived in a way that sets your soul on fire." End quote. So if you believe in having a soul and you believe in that concept of joy, having things spark joy in the Marie Kondo perspective or the KonMari method, you can think through, okay, well, what is it going to be that's going to make you more productive? Okay, it's the things that are going to really excite you, and so it's the who's the gentleman who his name is escaping me now, but he had the whole concept of the like either it's either hell yes or hell no or something to that effect, but
yes,
but that's the whole idea.
Shiver, the city baby guy.
Yes, Derek Sivers. So it's that concept. It's like you really want to do it or don't do it at all, and that is just a focusing, right? It's a focusing technique, and she's just giving one flavor of how you can do that. And I think whatever works. If you're really in that particular place where you want to be able to find great passion for doing something, great motivation for doing it otherwise, then use death, use mortality as a metric.
We can bring two examples, or not to put it as an example, but two people who went to that experience, who restructured their life completely. Tim Stringer, for Learn Only Focus, he did that. When he got sick, he really re-envisioned his life and everything. And also Federico Vitici of Max Story, same thing. He went, when he turned into an iPad only user because of that, because his sickness. So yes, and he both are healthy and strong, and wish them well. But those are a great example that you can turn around, what you have into something new, but you don't need to wait to have those kind of experience.
And rounding out our productivity blogosphere this week.
Oh, I love this article, How to Journal Your Goals and 11 Chaos to Write About. So the article, it was really interesting. It talks, hey, create a what they call a goal setting journal. And then it talks about different journals, the Stoic, the 5 seconds, the self journal. Hey, just get a recycle. But what to write? Hey, free write. To be honest, just jot down bullet point version, expand one idea at a time. But more importantly, it gives you 11 journal ideas to write about your daily plans, about your relationship, write about career, professional development, about money management, financial planning, your budget list, habits to build, problem solving, brain dumping, best things that happened today, visualizing the future, progress log. And I love this. When I create the impact journal, that was part of the idea of the impact journal. It is to recalibrate yourself in the morning and the night of where you are going to go. And what I have discovered and my clients have discovered is sometimes when they're exhausted and they are home and they open the journal and they don't want to do it, and they do through the exercise of remind yourself, reinvigorate those goals, they tend to do something else. They tend to jump in and push a little bit more. So doesn't matter if you do it on that product, you do it on any other product, you do it on any of the things that the article recommends. Look into that. Look into, keep that list of things that I can journal about, so that way you continue pushing yourself forward.
Great. And my only clarification here is that it says 11 goal journal ideas. There are 10.
And there are 10.
Otherwise, enjoyed the article in all the senses that you talked about. And so with that, those are our productivity articles this week, and that brings us to our halfway point, which means we're going to take a break now for a word from our sponsor, Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club. When we get back, we will do our tech articles roundup. We'll do we have a segment up, which is why don't they teach that in school with Dr. Frank Buck. We'll cover our productivity resources of the week, and then we'll close out with our featured stories and a few announcements. But we'll see you after the break.
While working in person may be normal for you, it's unlikely your coworkers are as interested in being productive as you are. Or working remotely or from home can be isolating. And there's something powerful about being with productive people, even virtually, that helps you be more engaged. If a flavor of these sounds familiar, Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club is for you. Co-working Space is a virtual work community designed to help members be more effective and efficient in their work and personal lives. At its core, we provide goal tracking and host focused action sessions throughout the week for accountability and camaraderie. Visit anythingbutidle.com/coworking to learn more. Co-working Space lives inside Personal Productivity Club, a digital community for personal productivity enthusiasts, so you can find people who use methods and tools you do too. Again, head over to anythingbutidle.com/coworking to see how Co-working Space can help you be more productive. And now, back to our show.
Welcome back, everybody, to Anything But Idle. I'm Ray Sidney-Smith, joined with Augusto Pinaud. And now on to our tech articles for the week. What's our first tech article this week, Augusto?
The @ sign on Google Docs. And Android police call it unholy @ menu. But really, it is really nice seeing how Google Docs had evolved. And I will continue complaining that the app in the iPad could be much better, or at least don't force me to use the app and let me use the browser. One of the two, but they have not compromised on either. So that complaint aside, Google Doc has really improved, and we use it to prepare this show. We use it for a couple of things, and now you can go to the ad and type the ad, and it will allows you to access people into the company when you are in a company settings, or templates, or files, or lists, or images, media that you have. So if you are in a Google Workspace, you can really play with the Smart Canvas integration that really take this to a different level. It's really nice to see how Google, and I have said this in the show, it's catching up to Microsoft, that is the standard on the big corporations, and getting there to show that they can be even more powerful than.
Yeah, I think this is a great new addition for those folks who are in Google Workspace, G Suite Basic, and I believe G Suite Education. Let's see here. No, G Suite Business. So Google Workspace, basically, Google Workspace Basic and Google Workspace Business. I'm presuming they mean standard there. They're still not updating their language related to the various new Google Workspace plans. But in essence, Google Workspace users, both on the individual and business levels, are going to start getting the at everything, basically the Smart Canvas integrations first if you have rapid release turned on, and then scheduled release domains will start on November 1st. So that will come out next Monday. So we're going to see this capability coming to basically your document in that sense. And it's just going to cut down a lot of jumping back and forth. Think about the number of times you have to go to one place and then come back to another, find a link for something, and so on and so forth. I've always enjoyed, when you highlight text and you just, Control or Command K, and it drops down and gives you all of your documents internally. You can find quickly things that are hyperlinked. It's basically doing a quick search for you. It cuts down so much time. This is going to additionally create those shaving off the seconds and minutes of finding things and being able to insert them directly into your documents. I think this is going to be really, really powerful, more powerful than I think people understand, at the present moment. But once you start to see how useful it is, you're going to think, how could you not have this, always? And so I'm really pleased to see this in the wild now.
Same here.
All right, next up.
So our next one is Google Meet is rolling out new audio and video locks for the host. And again, I have complained about how advanced Zoom features feels next to Google Meet. And I use Google Meet a lot. But when you're going to a certain level, not being able to mute people or everybody and not allow them to not unmute themselves, it's really something in which Zoom has had an advantage for months now, if not years. So Google Meet finally, it's allowing to not only block audio, block video, so that way, similar to what you can have in Zoom, you as a host can control the meeting. So good to say, finally.
Yeah, and I think this is really right in line with replacing webinar software for these kinds of environments where you don't want people joining to be on camera or on audio. You want, as the host, to be presenting to people and for them to be quiet and be able to chat and be able to consume your desktop screen and that would be it. I think, again, the next step is not just video locking, but basically turning off screen sharing, very similar to the way Zoom works. And in Zoom, you can just go into the security settings and say, no one can share, no one can unmute themselves, and no one can turn on their video so that everybody stays off. And that way, if you're recording, no one accidentally shows up on camera, with their husband or wife or spouse partner in the background in their underwear, right? Because if you're recording for the company and these things happen, you want to make sure that you can control for those environments. And when people can just join a meeting and be on camera immediately, that can cause some problems in those kinds of environments. So this is that next step in that direction. And I think it'll be a cost savings for so many companies that are trying to they've got the webinar tool for this, but they've got the, meeting tool for that. And it's all kinds of band-aiding together the pieces of the pie. And in reality, Google Meet can do all of these things. It's just a matter of surfacing the functionality for users. So I'm glad to see this happening. All right, next up.
So the next one is all for you. Google is reintroducing Google Home. I don't have Google Home, so I don't. But I understand. I live on an Amazon environment, so instead of a Google environment, and I understand what they're doing, upgrading and all that, but probably you will have a better insight. That's what I have.
Yeah, so in essence, what Google did was they had their Made by Google event recently, and they talked about Matter. And this actually matters, no pun intended, to all folks who are within the Google, Apple, and Amazon ecosystem. In essence, for that matter, Zigbee and all the other various protocols. Matter is a consortium protocol that allows for interoperability among those places. Google, in essence, is now rebranding Google Home to be a platform for all of its home smart automation devices, and as well as software and so on and so forth. So it's kind of just pooling all of that together into one space. And now Matter is going to be that underpinning for it all. So even if you have an Apple device, in essence, Matter should allow for Google Home, the platform, to be able to extend itself into those particular areas to be able to help developers create transition components and interoperability in that sense. So this is really, I mean, what it should have been from the beginning. All of the organizations should have gotten together and said, let's do this to start with, because now many people have, like if you go to Lowe's, they have their own platform that they created on Zigbee, and then you go to Home Depot and they've embraced a company that has their own set of platforms, and so your smart shades and your television systems and they're all communicating in different ways. You've got light bulbs made by 1,000 different Chinese manufacturers that are just pumping out these cheap technologies with great success. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. You can get a $10 light bulb that's a smart home bulb or a light switch, but they all can't talk to each other. And so Matter as a platform, I think is just a really, really fundamentally positive movement for the entire industry. And I think this will be really good for Google. It's weird that they chose to do this Google Home rebrand at this moment in time, but I think it's ultimately a positive for Google to basically say, yes, Google Home is a platform and not just specific devices. And then we'll see what they end up, calling all of these other pieces. But now we know why they went from calling them Google Homes to Nest Hub and, all of the Nest branding, basically replacing those pieces because they wanted to use that name in some other purpose. So,
and Matter is really, really exciting. So
absolutely,
I hope we continue moving that. So on our next news, some people is jumping up and down, me being one of those. Now you can read Comicsology in your Kindle app and the e-readers. And what this just basically means is you can read comics in the Kindle. We have talked in the show when we have talked about ink in color and even in black and white, how cool will be to have it on the Kindle. And it was not available. Now it is. It's not automatic. You need to go to your Comicsology setting page and activate it. And then you need to go to your Kindle device and download them. But you can now read Star Wars comics in the device and the iPad. And that is really exciting.
Wonderful.
The next one is from Chrome Unboxed, and it's the Google Calendar Productivity Experiment. And it's talking about the first look at the Google Calendar Chromebook. And now it's going to give you the month calendar over the corner of the device. When you click on the time, it will show you the whole calendar. And if you have not seen it, it is interesting. It's useful, to be able to click and get the calendar, especially if you live on a Chromebook.
Yeah, and I think, again, this is going back to the point of Chrome OS becoming more and more useful as a productivity tool, as a daily driver. And for those people who are in a business environment, they need quick access to their calendar, and having to open up the Google Calendar and look, like all of those pieces, it should just be faster to get to a calendar view. And so this not only helps you understand the just days, like figuring out, okay, what's next Tuesday's date, things of that nature. This really helps us get to that point faster, and also being able to jump to those dates within Google Calendar, I'm hoping is a part of the feature set here as well, so that we're able to quickly maybe right click on a date and add a calendar event, things of that nature that really does increase our productivity generally. And I think that can be just really, really very nice. And so it's good to see these experiments going on. I hope that we see more flexibility and functionality within that little taskbar area, akin to what we see currently in the Windows world. We have all of these functions in Windows. We should be seeing these functions in something like Chrome OS, and we have many of these functions, in the Mac ecosystem as well. The one thing that I always find to be kind of weird is that when I click on the Mac calendar, you can have the various date, time, day of the week, time and seconds showing. But when you click on it, you don't actually see a calendar view, and I really wish that Mac would give that preference. But notwithstanding, I think this is a good step in that direction.
Yeah. And our next one is Microsoft Outlook extension is now available for Google Chrome. So they released it initially for their browser, and you could basically click and you will see your inbox at glance. You will be able to interact with Outlook, and finally they move it forward. That makes sense. Again, Edge as well as Chrome live on the same base, the same engine. So it's cool to see Microsoft playing simpatico and having it on both platforms.
Yeah, I'm absolutely gonna play with this and see how it works and how clients can utilize this in their own world. But just the ability to have greater and faster access to your inbox from being in the browser, which is basically the operating system most people are working within most days, right? Like your browser ends up being your canvas for work, and being able to just quickly see a new email notification and being able to see those items in your inbox to know whether or not to deal with it can be really, really useful for some people who have to be responsive with email versus those of us who try to like turn off all of our notifications and only check email on a regular schedule, right? That's one way of managing it. But then there are others who must be highly responsive in email and have to quickly respond to those things throughout the day. And for those folks, I think this is going to be really useful for them. All right. So that brings us to the end of our technology articles and on to our contributor segment. And so we have various contributors who contribute different little segments throughout the month. And this week we have Dr. Frank Buck with his Why Don't They Teach You This in School segment. And today he's going to be talking to us. And on to Dr. Frank Buck.
Why don't they teach that in school? Hi, this is Frank Buck, and I've been writing for a long time. I have another book coming out at the end of the year, and I'll tell you a little secret. Before you ever see that book, quite a few people have proofread it, including a professional proofreader. They found spelling errors, syntax errors, and sentences that just simply didn't make sense. And that's with someone who's been writing for a lifetime. What about that seventh grader? Before she turns in her paper, there are no professional proofreaders out there to help her. Well, I'm going to share with you a couple of tools that I use whenever I'm writing this week's newspaper column, this week's blog post, an important email, or the current chapter of a book. Ernest Hemingway was noted for his style of short and powerful sentences. It was something that he learned as a cub reporter for the Kansas City Star. HemingwayApp.com can help that young person write with the same powerful style. Let me show you how. The website teaches you how it works. It shows example of things that it says are hard to read or sentences that it says are very hard to read. If you're using a complex word, it suggests a simpler one. It points out adverbs and helps you to minimize those, and it marks passive voice. Hemingway app flags it all. And to illustrate, I'm going to highlight and delete this sample text, and I'll replace it with the script that I'm using right now with you. Notice how Hemingway app flags the things that it says are hard to read, very hard to read. There's a passive voice right there. It says that this is fifth grade level reading and 434 words. So it gives you the word count, it gives you the grade level. Instead of turning in my paper and getting it back a week from now filled with red marks, what if I could get some feedback immediately? What if the teacher didn't have to spend so much time with a red pen? Why don't we teach that in school? Am I the only person who can't proofread his own writing? My eyes see what my brain meant, not what I actually wrote. But if someone else reads it aloud to me, I catch everything. So the second tool that I have for you today is a little Chrome extension called Read Aloud. Go to the Chrome Web Store and search for Read Aloud. Click on it and click to install it on your computer. Now when you want to hear some text, just simply highlight, right-click, and you're going to see Read Aloud right here. Click it and it'll read however much text you selected right back to you. Why don't they teach that in school? And if these ideas sound good, I have a blog post that goes into more detail and gives you one more tool for that seventh grader, high school senior, junior executive, or senior citizen. This has been Frank Buck asking the question, why don't they teach that in school?
Thanks so much, Dr. Buck. And with that, beyond the Why Don't They Teach You That in School segment, on to our productivity resource of the week. And so each week, Augusto and I share with you a productivity resource. It could be a tool, an app, a service that we have come across in our various and personal personal productivity journeys. So, Augusto, I'll go up first, I guess, with my tool this week, and it is also an education-focused tool. I didn't plan for it to be that way, but it just turned out that way to be Anki. So Anki is a really interesting program. What it does is it uses a mnemonic tool, which method called, or a mnemonic, that is, it's a memory method, which is spaced repetition. And while the website is Spartan and doesn't look all that fantastic, the tool is actually really, really useful. What it does is it uses spaced repetition. There are apps for Windows, Mac, Linux, iOS, Android, and the web browser. And you basically can load up study cards, and it can include any type of content. You can pretty much put images and audio and video. You can even use LaTeX. You could just put whatever you want in there. And there are many templates that actually come with Anki. So even if you are, not looking to like put all of the French verbs into the system manually, there's a French verbs template you can throw in there with all of the study cards for you to do that. And as you study the various Anki cards, it remembers whether or not you get it right. And when you get it wrong, then it shows it back to you in a particular time sequence. And that's the spaced repetition part. And so you can continue to keep optimizing your learning process through Anki. And I found it to be really useful for so many different things. And it's open source, so you can download it and use it freely. And there are all the applications, like I said, and for all of the platforms. So I just really like Anki for just studying all kinds of different things. So if you have to memorize things or you just would like to remember things like quotations, or learning a language and studying the various conjugations of verbs, or memorizing a speech for a class, or anything like that, it's just a really, really good tool for that. Anyway, Augusto, what's your tool this week?
So you see, I went from the eating route, and the application I have is Plentiful, and they call Plentiful Mindful Eating. And as my eating journey has changed and my health journey has changed, I now look for these places where I can plan, where it's like the more I plan, the better I eat. It's as simple as that. And I need all the help in the world, because otherwise I eat really, really poorly. So this app allows you to not only give you a bunch of, in this case, vegan recipes, but also allows you to help you with the habits, help you with the planning, teach you, hey, focus on your health. This is what is going to help you, help you to create the shopping list. Also, you can filter the recipes really, really quick. So if you have issues with food, that's what I have, and you want to make better choices, this is one of the options that you can download on the app. You will be able to cook, you will be able to read, it's fun. So that's something that I recommend.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Plentiful, mindful eating, vegan recipes, and meal planner. All right. So with productivity resources of the week out of the way, that brings us to our featured story of the week, Augusto. What is our featured story this week?
Google will make easier to separate work and personal life on Android. And basically what they're going to be able to do is allows you to do profiles. So you will be able to have inside of your device, a profile for work and a profile for personal. They link to another article from Monica Chin talking about why you should have that personal laptop, that work laptop, especially when work is given you. Remember, work will track. Okay, that's their job. They want that data. They want to know that you're productive. So they will track all that data on their laptop. So if you want to keep that personal, use your own. But on the phone, I think is really interesting. And after I read the article, it made me think on what Apple announced on iOS 15 with the profile. So you can now do, I have now one that says podcasting. So if somebody called me saying, hey, I'm recording a podcast right now, that's the reason I'm not responding, and give them an answer automatically. But also you can create basically different profiles. You can choose which applications on different things. So you can say, hey, I'm personal time now, so I don't want any work calls to pass through, or I don't want any emails, notifications, and these kind of things. And it seems like Google is doing something really similar to that. And it's going to be interesting. I hope they do it better.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. This, unfortunately, is not coming fast enough. This is coming to Google Workspace in 2022, so we're a little bit ahead of the curve here. But
Buy
I did.
iOS.
What's that?
I said, if you buy an iOS, you can get it today.
You're not going to get Android work profiles, unfortunately. You're going to get iOS profiles, and so those of us who are on the Android ecosystem, this makes it really difficult. Although I am really excited about the fact that we're seeing more and more, information coming along of Windows 11 Android app coming to the Windows environment, so you can run things like Instagram on your desktop. And so Android is getting some really powerful features here for those of us who are on the Android Windows side of things. And so anyway, the goal though here for Android work profiles is for you to be able to make that separation like you talked about. And I actually found the argument from Monica Chin more relatable to me, and it's just because I have too many devices, and so I felt like so I actually liked that idea, although I don't see myself doing it. I really don't see myself being in a place where I would say, okay, well, this iPad is only going to be for personal and I'm not going to use it for work at all. I like the form factor for certain types of things, both for work and personal, and I don't see myself buying multiple iPads just to be able to separate those items. I can understand context of what I'm doing, where I'm doing it. Even though I have multiple devices for different things, I bleed work and personal together a la GTD, right? I work off of context lists. So
but there is a distinction important for you. You don't have a corporate, you are the corporate. Okay. You don't care about your corporation tracking you because you are the corporation. Right. And I think that's something that is important to mark on that article from Monica Chin. She's talking about Enterprise. Getting the device from corporate, and that makes a difference, because I agree with you. I have multiple devices, but when I work with clients and I need to get one of their devices, or I need to do certain things on their devices, nothing of my personal life goes in there. Even on clients that I get access to their system to use, even my own machines, they go into the MacBook in their own profile. So that way it's all there. It can be, we wipe out right now and nothing of my personal have ever bleed in there. So I think that's an important distinction between what you do and the article. That said, I have my iPad mini is my personal device. That's the device that I read. That's the device that I think. Can that access work? Yes. And that is on purpose. That is, as I said, I am my own corporation. Okay. So the IT already knows that I'm terrible at that. So, but having that device to be centered, to be personal and not work, it's really helped in the mindset. It is the same thing I've been talking for years about, using one browser for work, one browser to play. Do I have work on the iPad mini? Yes. It's the norm? No. The norm is I grab my big iPad and work. But also, when I grab the iPad mini, I can disconnect from work. So what we were saying at the beginning of the show, it's a way to trick me into taking actual leisure time. If I take the iPad mini, I'm not expected that I'm going to work. If I carry my iPad Pro, you can bet that I'm at least have the intention to work. Doesn't matter if I sit on the backyard or the living room. With the iPad mini, that change.
Yeah, so I agree with you, and I fully understand where you're coming from and where Monica Chin is coming from with regard to this. I will also note, though, that, again, pushing forward what Android work profiles is really doing is akin to how Chrome profiles currently works. And so so for those of you who don't know, you can now create more than one profile in your Chrome browser. For that matter, you can extend that to any of the Chromium projects now. But the idea here now is that I have a Chrome browser for personal, so I don't need multiple browsers because I'm basically launching another version of Chrome in my existing user account. So I'm not changing accounts on the operating system. I'm just really switching Chrome browser profiles. And by doing so, it's segregated. It's a walled garden. And so I can log into my, say, if I'm working with a client where I need to be logged into many of their accounts all at once, I will log into their various accounts in a new Chrome profile. And then when I'm done, I delete the profile. So all traces of them and me on using their tools goes away when that profile gets deleted. And I feel like that's what Android work profiles is doing. It's basically creating this sandbox in which the work profile is operating and segregated from the rest of the applications and other pieces there. Presumably also the telemetry may have a little bit of bleed over both into the work and personal applications. And I'll be curious how they deal with those sensor and other telemetry based items. But for the most part, the work profiles are a segregation of what is happening with those apps in that space. And so I'm curious whether or not this will be useful to people like me, right? As you said, I track a lot of data about myself for myself to be more productive, for billable hours, for all kinds of other things. But in the corporate environment, you do want to have some level of separation between those items, especially in the bring your own device to work scenarios and in the work from home scenarios that we're in right now. And I'll be curious to see whether or not that extends to Android tablets, because we're seeing more and more Android tablets like the Xiaomi Pad and others that are really nice devices, good quality hardware, and they're running Android. And now you can potentially bring that level of segregation to the kind of the tablet space for yourself as well. And again, I don't know how we mediate between the Chromebooks and Chrome profiles and the Android work profiles once you're on a Chromebook, but we'll need to kind of navigate those waters once this does come out. But we have a little bit of time to start learning about what's going on there. And I think it behooves us all to do that so that we can have this better compartmentalization of our work and our personal lives. And so with that really closes out our thoughts in terms of our featured story this week. And that brings us on to announcements. Do we have any announcements, Augusto?
We do. We have actually one announcement this week after long week of announcements last week, but the announcement this week is
brain pickings.
Brain pickling. Yes, thank you. It's been rebranded as Marginalium after 15 years of brain picking. Congratulations. They are now going to become the Marginalium, and well, they're changing that, and they're going open about donating, about being part of their new plan to turn into, hey, you can do a donation and you can be an active part of making this a reality.
Yeah, absolutely. Congratulations to her name's escaping me now. What's her name? Why is her name escaping me? Of all things, her name is escaping me at this present moment.
Maria Popova.
And yes, Maria Popova. So congratulations to Popova, and I mean it's a one woman show, so I'm not sure if she has other help in and on the platform.
And actually she mentioned it. She mentioned on the article that this is her job, that she don't have assistants, that what is written is hers and all that. So it's something that she has been maintaining 15 years on herself, and now she's trying to make it grow.
Yeah, so very remarkable, and congratulations to her. And the Marginalian is like, so marginalia are the notes taken in the margins of books, and so the Marginalian is the name she chose for this, and I find it to be quite quite lovely. So with that, we have some other news that'll be chalked into the show notes. So if you look in the extra news sections of the show notes, you'll be able to find that. But with that, we've covered the productivity news this week. And thanks to you, Augusto Pinaud, for putting together the show each and every week.
My pleasure.
All right, everybody. if you head over to anythingbutidle.com/089, for those of you who are watching live, that'll be after we publish the podcast episode. But once you are listening to this in after the fact, you will find at anythingbutidle.com/089 our show notes, which includes links to all the stories, tools of the week, our productivity resources of the week, our extra stories that we didn't and couldn't cover during the episode because of time constraints, and text transcripts, both one to read. Click on the read more link. It'll expand it so you can read it right there on the page. And there's a download link below that. You click on that and that will go ahead and give you a PDF that downloads to your local system for being able to read offline. If there is something we missed after looking at the show notes and the extra stories, feel free to use our contact page at anythingbutidle.com. You can also tweet and or DM us using Twitter. At anythingbutidle is our hashtag. Feel free to question or comment us there. You can also do that on the website, as we noted. You can also leave a comment directly on anythingbutidle.com/089 in the comment section right below the story, and we'll find that and be able to respond back to you there. If this is your first time watching the live stream, feel free to click the subscribe button, and you'll get notified when we go live weekly. And of course, click the thumbs up button if you are watching on YouTube. That really helps us to grow our personal productivity listening and watching community. And the same thing with the podcast. If you're listening to the podcast, feel free to consider, or please consider, adding us to your podcast by subscribing. You can also leave a rating or review in Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, or if you use a particular app that allows you to rate and review us. That really does help us with compliments to make us feel happy about what we're doing, but also it helps us to grow the personal productivity listening community, and that does really help us grow by telling the algorithm that we're doing things that people enjoy. And so thank you for doing that. And so with that, we will see you all next time on Anything But Idle. Here's to your productive life. Take care, everybody.